This isn't just another heartwarming dog story. It's a tale of uncanny intuition and an extraordinary bond. When a family's beloved dog begins acting in ways they can't explain, they have no idea it's leading them toward one of life's most surprising and beautiful moments. Watch as their loyal companion's behavior sets the stage for an unforgettable journey, one that reveals the magic of a dog's instincts and how, without saying a word, he predicts the arrival of a new baby. Witness the powerful connection between a dog and his family, as his mysterious actions leave them in awe and remind us all of the profound love and intuition that exists between humans and their furry friends. Bella had always been more than just a dog to Sarah. When Sarah first adopted Bella from the local shelter, the dog was timid, wary, unsure of her place in the world. Bella's past wasn't perfect, and it showed in her cautious behavior. But something about the bond between her and Sarah was instant and almost magical. Bella quickly found her place in the home and in Sarah's heart. Sarah, who had never been the type to want anything but unconditional love in a companion, knew she had found that in Bella. The dog's loyalty was unwavering, and in return, Sarah gave her everything she had. They were a team. Sarah had never been a stranger to heartbreak, but Bella had a way of easing her pain. On difficult days, Bella would rest her head on Sarah's lap, her gaze steady and comforting, as if saying, "I'm here, and it's going to be okay." Without speaking a word, Bella seemed to understand Sarah's deepest emotions. It was as if they could communicate without needing to say anything at all. When Sarah's life took a turn for the better, when she found out she was expecting, Bella's role in the family became even more significant. Sarah had always dreamed of being a mother, and when the positive test result came back, she was overjoyed. The news felt like a new chapter in her life, one that she had longed for, one that she had prayed for. She couldn't wait to share this new journey with her beloved Bella. But little did she know, Bella would soon take on a role far beyond that of a loyal dog. In the early days of her pregnancy, Sarah found herself exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. The morning sickness, the physical toll, the emotional strain, it was all much more challenging than she had anticipated. As the days wore on, Sarah spent more time resting, taking naps whenever she could. And during those quiet moments, Bella would always be there. She had always been a constant presence, but now, something in her behavior changed. Bella, once playful and full of energy, now seemed to be more attuned to Sarah's needs. Every time Sarah would sit on the couch, feeling tired or nauseous, Bella would curl up beside her, resting her head on Sarah's lap. There was an unmistakable calm in Bella's actions, as if the dog instinctively knew Sarah needed her quiet support. Over the weeks, this behavior grew more pronounced. Bella was always by Sarah's side, more than ever before. Whenever Sarah would take a nap, Bella would lie next to her, never straying too far. At first, it felt like nothing more than a comforting gesture, an affectionate dog simply seeking closeness. But Sarah started to notice something else, something deeper. Bella seemed to be paying particular attention to Sarah's growing belly, her soft brown eyes often fixed on it, as if she was watching over the life inside. It was as though Bella understood there was something new, something miraculous, in the making. Sarah often wondered how much Bella truly understood. Could the dog sense the baby growing inside her? Was Bella's quiet presence a form of protection, a way of ensuring that Sarah and the baby were safe? Sarah couldn't explain it, But every time Bella gently rested her head on her belly, she felt as if there was a deeper, unspoken connection between them, a connection that went beyond the love of a pet for its owner. Bella wasn't just a companion, she was a guardian, in a way Sarah had never realized before. On a particular afternoon, as Sarah sat on the couch feeling especially fatigued, Bella did something that Sarah would never forget. Bella walked over to Sarah, her tail low and her body still. The dog gently nudged Sarah's stomach with her nose, as though trying to make a silent connection with the baby inside. Sarah froze for a moment, unsure of what had just happened. Bella had never done this before, and there was something about the gesture that felt more deliberate than any of the other affectionate acts the dog had shown in the past. For a moment, Sarah just stared at Bella, her heart racing with a sense of awe and wonder. What was going on? Could Bella really sense something that Sarah herself hadn't fully realized yet? It was a question that lingered in Sarah's mind for days after that moment. But life moved on, and Sarah continued with her pregnancy. But now, every time Bella rested her head on Sarah's belly or nuzzled against her side, Sarah couldn't help but feel that Bella was preparing for something big. As the weeks passed, the changes in Bella's behavior grew even more pronounced. She was constantly by Sarah's side, more attentive than ever before. Bella seemed to understand that Sarah's needs were no longer just physical, there was an emotional component too. Bella's presence seemed to reassure Sarah, as if the dog could sense her anxieties, her fears about becoming a mother. Sarah wasn't sure what to expect. Being pregnant was already overwhelming, and the idea of giving birth was both thrilling and terrifying. But Bella's constant, calming presence was like a balm to Sarah's nerves. No matter how many doubts swirled in Sarah's mind, no matter how anxious she became, Bella remained steadfast, offering quiet comfort without question. It was as though Bella knew something Sarah didn't. There was a sense of quiet anticipation in the dog's movements, an awareness that Sarah couldn't quite place. But whatever it was undeniable. Bella was not just a dog. She was a silent guide, a protector in ways that Sarah couldn't yet fully comprehend. As Sarah entered the later stages of her pregnancy, she began to feel more fatigued, her body aching with the weight of the growing life inside her. At times, the physical discomfort became overwhelming. Bella, however, remained ever watchful. Whenever Sarah would feel particularly exhausted, or when her back would ache beyond what she could handle, Bella would be there. The dog would follow her from room to room, always close, always attentive. And during those long, sleepless nights when Sarah couldn't seem to find comfort, Bella would curl up next to her, offering her warmth and quiet companionship. It was as though Bella knew the baby's arrival was approaching, and she was preparing herself and Sarah for whatever lay ahead. One evening, as Sarah lay on the couch, exhausted from the day's demands, Bella sat beside her, her eyes focused intently on Sarah's growing belly. For a moment, it almost seemed as though Bella was waiting. There was a stillness in the air, a quiet tension that Sarah couldn't explain. Bella's gaze was soft but unwavering, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. She tried to ignore the thought. After all, she was only a few months away from her due date, but deep down Sarah knew that Bella wasn't simply keeping her company. She was preparing for something. The dog's behavior had shifted, and Sarah couldn't help but feel that Bella understood something that was yet to unfold. As the night stretched on, Sarah tried to rest, but the unease she felt lingered, only to be matched by the calm presence of Bella, her constant companion. Sarah drifted into a fitful sleep, unsure of what was to come, but feeling the weight of Bella's quiet, unspoken vigilance. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, Bella's behavior became even more pronounced. By the time Sarah entered her second trimester, it was as if Bella had taken on an entirely new role. She was no longer just the playful, affectionate dog she had always been. Now, she was a quiet, protective presence, constantly by Sarah's side. Bella's attention to Sarah's every move was impossible to ignore. The once independent dog had become completely devoted to staying as close as possible to Sarah, almost as if she could sense the significance of what was happening. It wasn't just Sarah who noticed it. The rest of the family began to remark on Bella's strange new behavior too. Normally, Bella would be running around the yard, fetching sticks, playing with the kids, or curling up on the couch with whoever was around. But now, Bella seemed to have an invisible tether to Sarah. Wherever Sarah went, Bella followed, closely. Whenever Sarah would sit down, Bella would lie beside her, her head resting gently on Sarah's lap, her eyes locked on her in an almost knowing way. Sarah couldn't help but feel that Bella was watching her with a new intensity, a quiet but strong vigilance that seemed to go beyond typical canine behavior. Bella had always been protective, always loving. But this was different. It was as if Bella was guarding something invisible but profoundly important. At first, Sarah tried to dismiss it as simply a side effect of her pregnancy. After all, she was experiencing more fatigue than usual, and maybe Bella was just reacting to the changes in her routine. But the longer it went on, the harder it became to ignore the undeniable feeling that Bella was trying to communicate something only the dog understood. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Sarah lay down on the couch, her back aching from the strain of carrying the baby. Bella was beside her, as always, lying quietly by Sarah's feet. The house was still, and Sarah had just closed her eyes to rest when Bella did something that made her sit up in surprise. Bella, who had been lying with her head on Sarah's lap, suddenly lifted her head, her ears twitching as if she had heard something Sarah couldn't. Her eyes locked onto Sarah's belly, and she slowly moved closer, nudging her nose against the pregnant curve. The motion was gentle, but deliberate. Sarah watched Bella in a mix of awe and curiosity, unsure of what to make of the dog's actions. For a moment, nothing happened, and then Bella did something that sent a chill through Sarah's spine. Bella stood up and paced around the room, her eyes never leaving Sarah. The dog seemed unsettled, her movements quick and erratic. She walked from one side of the room to the other, stopping and turning, her gaze always fixed on Sarah. Her ears were perked, and her nose twitched as if she was sniffing for something Sarah couldn't detect. "Bella?" Sarah called softly, unsure of what to make of the dog's strange behavior. Bella paused, her tail stiffened for a brief moment. Then she circled back to Sarah and stood at her feet, looking up at her with wide, attentive eyes. Sarah felt an odd sensation in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite describe. She reached down to pet Bella's head, but the dog remained still, almost as if she was waiting for something, waiting for Sarah to notice what she had already sensed. Later that evening, as Sarah tried to relax before bed, Bella did something even stranger. As Sarah was standing in the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water, Bella walked into the room and stood still. She stared at Sarah, and for the briefest moment, it felt like the entire world had paused. Bella's eyes seemed to hold a deep understanding, a quiet wisdom that Sarah couldn't fully grasp. The dog's presence felt different, more alert, more knowing. It was as if Bella had seen something in Sarah, something the human couldn't quite see for herself yet. The family chalked it up to the changes that were naturally occurring with Sarah's pregnancy. After all, dogs could be highly sensitive to their owner's physical and emotional changes. But there was something in Bella's demeanor that hinted at something deeper, something far more intuitive than any of them had realized. Weeks passed, and Bella's unusual behavior continued. She seemed to follow Sarah everywhere. Whenever Sarah went to the bathroom, Bella was right behind her. When Sarah went to bed, Bella lay on the floor beside the bed, always close, never straying too far. If Sarah went outside to take a short walk, Bella was there too, walking by her side, her head tilted slightly, as if scanning her for any signs of distress. Bella's behavior was constant, like a silent watch, a subtle but persistent reminder that something was changing. Sarah, now beginning to feel the weight of the pregnancy, couldn't help but feel that Bella was preparing for something. It was as if the dog understood that life was about to change in ways that no one could predict. And as Sarah's belly grew larger, Bella grew more protective. It was almost as though Bella had become the sentinel of the home, the keeper of this new life, guarding not just Sarah, but the child she carried within her. In the quiet moments, Sarah began to wonder, could Bella sense the baby in a way that no one else could? Was the dog's intense focus and strange behavior her way of preparing for the arrival of the child? There was something undeniably special in Bella's actions, something that went beyond mere affection. This wasn't just a dog being loyal to her owner. Bella was sensing something intangible, something beyond human understanding. And the bond that had always existed between them was now being tested in ways Sarah couldn't even begin to explain. And then, one evening, something would happen that would change everything. The days leading up to the baby's arrival were a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. As Sarah's due date drew closer, she could feel the anticipation building. She had been preparing for months, reading books, attending birthing classes, and getting the nursery ready. But despite all the planning, there was an undeniable sense of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. What would it be like to bring a baby into the world? How would she handle it? Would everything go according to plan? As the evening approached one day, Sarah felt an unfamiliar tightness in her stomach, something she hadn't felt before. It was a dull ache, a discomfort that seemed to travel across her back and down into her hips. She tried to shake it off as just another part of the pregnancy, but it persisted. Her mind began to race as she wondered if this was it, if labor was finally beginning. It was still early, she thought, but the pain was there, consistent and real. Meanwhile, Bella's behavior was becoming even more intense. As Sarah sat on the couch, rubbing her stomach in an attempt to soothe the discomfort, Bella came over and sat at her feet, watching her with a sharp, unwavering gaze. The dog had been so quiet lately, almost as if waiting for something to happen. Bella seemed to be more on edge than usual, pacing in small circles, her ears flicking at every sound. She would occasionally pause, sit in front of Sarah, and stare at her belly with a fixed, focused expression. It was as though Bella was waiting for something only she could sense. For a moment, Sarah wondered if the dog was simply reacting to her discomfort. After all, dogs are known for being sensitive to their owners' moods and physical states. But there was something different in Bella's behavior this time, something that made Sarah pause and take notice. Bella's pacing continued, her body low to the ground, her movements measured and deliberate. Sarah could hear Bella's nails clicking on the floor as the dog made her rounds around the living room. Every so often, Bella would stop, her gaze never wavering from Sarah. There was an intensity to her stare, a knowing in those eyes that left Sarah feeling both comforted and strangely unsettled. When the pain in Sarah's stomach grew stronger, Bella became more anxious, her body stiffening as if responding to Sarah's distress. The dog was no longer sitting or lying down. She was standing, circling Sarah's feet, and whining softly, a soft, almost worried sound that tugged at Sarah's heart. "What's wrong, Bella?" Sarah asked quietly, though she wasn't sure if she was asking the dog or herself. Bella didn't answer, of course. She never did. But as Sarah felt another wave of discomfort, Bella gently pressed her nose into Sarah's stomach, nuzzling it with a tenderness that took Sarah by surprise. It was a gentle gesture, but it felt incredibly significant, as if Bella was trying to tell her something. As the evening wore on, the discomfort in Sarah's body intensified. She felt a wave of panic start to rise within her, her mind flashing to the birth plan she had written, the classes she had attended, the advice she had heard. Was this really it? Was she going into labor? It seemed too soon. Bella's behavior became even more frantic as the night deepened. She wouldn't leave Sarah's side, walking with her as Sarah moved from room to room. When Sarah went to the bathroom, Bella was right there, standing at the door, her nose pressed to the crack. When Sarah tried to lie down, Bella lay beside the bed, her eyes wide and watchful, always alert. The odd thing was, as Sarah's body grew more tense, Bella's presence seemed to offer a strange kind of comfort. Despite the urgency in her actions, Bella's calm, steady gaze brought a sense of reassurance to Sarah. Bella had always been there for her, but tonight felt different. It was as if Bella knew something was coming, something that would change everything. And then it happened. As Sarah sat down on the couch once more, trying to catch her breath, the first real contraction hit her. It wasn't just discomfort now. It was a sharp, unmistakable pain that caused Sarah to gasp. Her body stiffened, and she clutched the edge of the couch as the contraction continued. The pain was unlike anything she had experienced before, and for a moment, she could do nothing but breathe through it. Bella was at her side immediately. The dog stood next to the couch, her eyes wide, ears raised, as if sensing Sarah's distress. She moved closer to Sarah, pressing her body against Sarah's side, offering her warmth and comfort in a way that only a dog could. Bella didn't bark or whine. She didn't try to jump or run around like she usually did when she was excited. Instead, Bella remained calm, her presence a steady reassurance. The contraction passed, and Sarah took a deep breath, trying to relax. But before she could even collect herself, another contraction hit, and this time it was even more intense. Sarah gasped, gripping the couch harder, feeling a sudden wave of panic rise within her. Was this it? Was the baby really coming? Bella stayed by her side, her body pressed firmly against Sarah's, her eyes never leaving her owner. There was no doubt in Sarah's mind now. Bella knew something. The dog's behavior wasn't just coincidence. Bella had known that this moment was coming long before Sarah had fully understood it herself. The contractions came quickly now, one after another. Bella stayed beside Sarah, never straying far, her watchful gaze never wavering. It was as though the dog was guiding Sarah through the pain, her presence acting as a silent support. Sarah felt herself growing more anxious with each contraction, but Bella's quiet strength gave her a strange sense of calm. When the pain subsided once more, Sarah took a shaky breath and stood up. She moved toward the door, grabbing her hospital bag and calling out to her husband, who had been waiting anxiously in the next room. Bella followed closely behind, her eyes trained on Sarah, as if waiting for the next sign, the next step. It was then that Sarah realized just how deeply connected she and Bella were. The dog had known. Bella had somehow sensed that the time had come. She had been preparing Sarah for this moment, guiding her with her quiet intuition and her steadfast presence. And now, as the contractions grew stronger, Bella stayed by Sarah's side, offering the kind of support that only an intuitive companion could provide. With Bella leading the way, Sarah stepped into the unknown, ready to face the challenge ahead. The baby's arrival was imminent, and in that moment, Sarah knew that no matter what happened, she wasn't alone. As Sarah and her husband, John, rushed to the hospital, Bella's presence lingered in Sarah's thoughts. The dog had been her rock throughout the entire pregnancy, and now, in the midst of the pain and uncertainty of labor, Bella's calm, watchful nature was still with Sarah, comforting her from a distance. By the time Sarah and John arrived at the hospital, the contractions had become unbearably intense, each one bringing a wave of pressure that seemed to ripple through her entire body. Nurses ushered her into the delivery room, and the chaos of the moment set in. There were doctors, nurses, monitors, and the steady rhythm of machines beeping in the background. But despite the whirlwind around her, Sarah couldn't help but remember Bella. The dog who had known this moment was coming before anyone else did. Sarah focused on her breathing as the contractions grew stronger. Every muscle in her body was tense, and the pain was like nothing she had ever experienced before. But amid the pain, there was something else, a deep, overwhelming sense of anticipation. The moment had arrived. This was the beginning of the new chapter she had been waiting for. John, ever supportive, stayed by Sarah's side, holding her hand, offering encouraging words. But Sarah's mind kept drifting back to Bella, who had always been there for her in moments of uncertainty. She could almost picture the dog, pacing back and forth in the living room, her eyes fixed on Sarah with that intense, knowing gaze. Bella had somehow understood that this moment was coming, and now Sarah was about to experience it firsthand. As the hours passed, Sarah's contractions became more frequent and more intense. The delivery was progressing slowly but steadily, and the pain was becoming unbearable. Sarah squeezed John's hand, trying to stay focused on the task at hand, but her mind wandered to Bella again. What was she doing now? Was she waiting at home, sensing the birth was imminent? The thought brought a brief smile to Sarah's face, even in the midst of the intensity of labor. Bella had been the one to comfort her through every ache, every anxiety. And now, Sarah realized, the dog's role was not just as a pet, but as a guardian. Bella had been there when Sarah needed her most. The hours dragged on, and the pain of each contraction seemed to stretch longer, the pressure mounting with every passing moment. Just when Sarah thought she couldn't take it anymore, the doctor reassured her that she was close. So close. "You're doing great, Sarah," the doctor said, his voice calm and steady. "Just a little longer now." As Sarah neared the final stages of labor, her body was racked with exhaustion, the pain overwhelming. It felt as though time itself was slowing down. She had wanted this moment for so long, and now that it was finally here, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. Then, just as the delivery room seemed to fill with an even deeper intensity, Sarah felt a sudden shift in her body. The urge to push was unmistakable. The doctor and nurses moved quickly, preparing for the final stage of the birth. With John beside her, holding her hand and speaking words of encouragement, Sarah took a deep breath and began to push. The room was quiet, save for the sounds of the medical team working efficiently to guide her through the process. Sarah's world became a blur of pain and determination. Every muscle in her body was screaming, but Sarah focused on the moment, on the life she was about to bring into the world. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it happened. The room filled with the cry of a newborn. It was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. The weight of the world seemed to lift from her shoulders, and in that moment, as the doctor placed her baby in her arms, Sarah's heart swelled with love, joy, and relief. John kissed her forehead, tears in his eyes, overwhelmed by the sight of their new child. But Sarah's thoughts were still with Bella, even though the dog wasn't physically there. The bond she had shared with Bella, the way the dog had known this moment was coming, was now more meaningful than ever. Bella had been with her every step of the way, even if she couldn't be there in the hospital room. As Sarah held her newborn baby, she looked down at the tiny face in her arms. The child was perfect, healthy, and the most precious thing she had ever held. Her eyes welled with tears, not just from the relief of the labor, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had made it through, with the help of her family, and with the love and protection of Bella, who had guided her through this journey without ever saying a word. The nurses moved around Sarah, preparing to clean up and get things settled. But in the quiet moments that followed, Sarah thought back to Bella. The dog had predicted the arrival of the baby long before Sarah had even realized it herself. Bella had known, and her gentle presence had provided the support and strength that Sarah had needed. As the nurse placed a small cap on the baby's head and gently wrapped the newborn in a soft blanket, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. It was as though Bella's spirit was still with her, watching over them both, guiding them through the unknown. Even in the chaos of the hospital, even in the uncertainty of labor, Bella's calm, intuitive nature had been a source of strength. As Sarah held her newborn baby in her arms, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the rush of emotions flooding her heart. It wasn't just the joy of the birth. It was the overwhelming sense of gratitude she felt toward the dog who had been by her side through the entire journey. Bella, though not physically present in the hospital room, was in Sarah's thoughts every second. She had played an irreplaceable role in this chapter of Sarah's life, offering unwavering loyalty and silent guidance when Sarah needed it most. The first few days after the birth were a blur of nursing, learning to care for her baby, and adjusting to the new rhythms of motherhood. Sarah had never imagined how intense those first moments with her newborn would be, but she felt a deep connection to her child, as though they had always been one. Each small gesture, the baby's tiny hand grasping her finger, the soft sound of the baby's breathing, filled her heart with a sense of purpose she had never known before. But in the quiet moments of those first few days, as Sarah and John settled into their new routine, Bella's absence was deeply felt. Sarah longed for her dog to be there beside her, offering the same calm, intuitive presence that had sustained her through the months of pregnancy. She knew Bella would be an incredible companion to her baby, just as she had been a protector and friend to Sarah. A few days after they returned home from the hospital, Sarah couldn't wait to reunite with Bella. She had missed the dog's steady presence more than she had expected. Sarah had spoken to her in the days leading up to the birth, telling Bella how much she appreciated her and how grateful she was for the role the dog had played in helping her prepare for this moment. When Sarah opened the door to their home, Bella was there, her tail wagging excitedly as she ran to greet them. But it wasn't just a playful greeting. It was as though Bella knew exactly what had happened. Her eyes were softer than usual, filled with a quiet wisdom that Sarah recognized immediately. It was as if Bella had known all along, from the first nudge to the last moment of labor, that her role in the family was about to expand. Bella stood before Sarah, her body low to the ground, her eyes scanning Sarah with an intensity that was both protective and loving. She sniffed the baby's blanket, her nose gently brushing against the newborn's tiny face. And then she looked up at Sarah, as if silently acknowledging the change that had occurred. Bella's instinctive behavior was more than just curiosity. It was as though she had been waiting for this very moment. Sarah, feeling an emotional lump rise in her throat, sat down on the couch, cradling her baby in her arms. Bella approached slowly, lying down beside her with a gentle huff, as though ensuring the baby was safe. The dog's body pressed lightly against Sarah's leg, her eyes never leaving the baby, her protective instincts immediately kicking in. It was a moment that felt almost sacred, a silent recognition of the bond between Bella, Sarah, and the new life that had joined them. The baby, wrapped in soft blankets, let out a tiny coo, and Bella's ears perked up, her head tilting slightly as she studied the sound. The baby's cry, though faint, brought a look of curiosity to Bella's eyes. Without hesitation, the dog gently nudged the baby's foot, as though offering a subtle form of reassurance. Sarah chuckled softly, feeling a sense of comfort wash over her. It was as if Bella was not only accepting the baby, but embracing her role as a guardian, watching over the newborn with the same tenderness and dedication she had shown Sarah during the pregnancy. Over the next few days, Bella's presence became an even more integral part of their lives. She would follow Sarah and John around the house, her watchful eyes always on the baby, her body close by whenever they rested. Bella's protective instinct was unmistakable, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace, knowing that her loyal dog was there, keeping an ever-vigilant watch over the little one. As the baby grew more alert and started to recognize the sounds around her, Bella's role became even more clear. She would sit by the crib, her gaze soft but unwavering, her presence calm and reassuring. When the baby made small movements or sounds, Bella would tilt her head in curiosity, as though acknowledging the new life in the family. Sarah had no doubt that Bella understood the importance of this new little being. The bond that had formed between them during the pregnancy, during those long months of silent connection, had deepened even further. Bella was now not just Sarah's dog. She was the baby's protector, a guardian in every sense of the word. As the weeks passed, Sarah watched Bella and her baby grow together. Bella would lie on the floor next to the crib, her body relaxed, but ever watchful. When Sarah would leave the room for a few minutes, Bella would stand up, moving to the door as if to check on the baby. It wasn't an obsession, it was a quiet, constant presence, as if the dog had accepted her role as the protector of this tiny life. Sarah had never seen anything quite like it before. Bella's bond with the baby was as instinctual as it was profound. There were days when Sarah would sit in the nursery, watching Bella and the baby interact, and she couldn't help but marvel at the unique connection they shared. Bella had predicted the arrival of this child long before Sarah had fully understood what was happening. The way the dog had silently guided Sarah through the pregnancy, the way she had sensed the arrival of the baby before anyone else, felt almost magical. It was as if Bella had been preparing for this moment her entire life, and now that it had arrived, she was ready to take on the responsibility of being the baby's guardian. As Sarah reflected on the incredible bond between her, Bella, and the baby, She realized that this wasn't just a story of a dog and her family. It was a reminder of the profound, unspoken connections that exist between humans and animals. Bella had known. She had known what no one else could have predicted. And in her own quiet way, Bella had been there for Sarah every step of the journey. In the months that followed, Sarah's gratitude for Bella deepened. She had not only brought comfort and love during the hardest days of pregnancy, but had become a protector for the baby, offering her guidance and watchful care. There were moments when Sarah would look at Bella and wonder, how had this incredible dog known? How had she sensed the changes that were coming? But the truth was, some things didn't need to be explained. The bond between a dog and her family was a language of love, loyalty, and protection. A language that didn't require words. As Sarah looked at Bella, lying peacefully by the crib, she felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. The baby was safe. The family was whole. And Bella, ever faithful, was watching over them all, just as she had always done. Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next story of love, loyalty, and the incredible bond we share with our paw-some friends.